Dave, why don't you give it a minute as people are joining the webinar?
There's Doug McGarrah. Good.
Praise the Lord.
You made it.
Doug.
Okay, Dave, if you want to just wait another 30 seconds, Kevin's calling in now.
Okay, good.
Here's Kevin.
Somebody's called in. That must be Kevin.
Must be Kevin. Yep.
Yeah. Matt, can our participants hear us now?
Yes, Dave, why don't you start while I work out Kevin?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry for the late start. We're having a couple of technical difficulties. Kevin Law will be joining us shortly. But I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome you and thank you all for joining this program on the North Atlantic Rail Project. By way of introduction, I'd like to introduce our panelists, beginning with our County Executive, Steve Bellone, who I'm sure you all recognize. Steve Bellone was sworn into office as Suffolk County Executive on January 1st, 2012. He's the 8th county executive in county history. He previously served as Babylon Town Supervisor from 2001 to 2011. County Executive Bellone, who represents more than 1.5 million residents, has focused his efforts on saving taxpayer dollars through governmental reform, boosting economic development, improving Long Island's water quality to protect the water supply, and enhancing the quality of life for Suffolk residents. County Executive Bellone's economic development plan is focused on building innovation economies throughout Suffolk County to attract highly skilled and knowledgeable workers and keep young professionals on Long Island. His Connect Long Island vision aims to invest in an upgraded rapid transportation system that will conveniently connect universities, research centers, downtowns, and parks. The plan is designed to strengthen local businesses by expanding natural customer bases and develop the necessary infrastructure to provide residents with north-south transportation options. Bellone's signature downtown revitalization efforts included transit-oriented developments such as Wyandanch Rising, Ronkonkoma Hub, the Heartland Project, and the East End Transportation Plan. Next, I'd like to introduce Luke Bronin. Mayor Bronin was sworn in as the 67th mayor of the city of Hartford on January 1st, 2016. He was reelected to a second term in November of 2019. Mayor Bronin is a husband, a father, a veteran, and an attorney, and he's a stronger Hartford for all of the city's residents. After taking office in 2016, Mayor Bronin led the city through the biggest fiscal crisis in the city's history, working to put Hartford on a path to fiscal stability. In addition to promoting economic development and investment, his administration has focused on building opportunity for Hartford residents through key initiatives like the Youth Services Corps and the Reentry Welcome Center. He's also worked to position Hartford as a center of innovation and establish it as a leader in environmental stewardship. Prior to becoming mayor, Mayor Bronin served in senior positions in both federal and state government. In 2013, he was appointed by then Connecticut Governor Daniel Malloy to serve as general counsel. As the governor's chief lawyer, Bronin was deeply involved in developing policies to combat veterans' homelessness, pass common sense gun laws, expand economic opportunities, reform our criminal justice system, and protect our environment. Prior to his role in the governor's office, he served in the Obama administration as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Terrorist Financing and Financial Crimes at the U.S. Department of Treasury. Previously, he served as Senior Advisor to Deputy Secretary of U.S. Treasury as an International Affairs Fellow with the Council on Foreign Relations and as the Chief of Staff to the President of Property and Casualty Operations at the Hartford Financial Services. Mayor Bronin served as an officer in the United States Naval Reserve and was a member of the military's anti-corruption task force during his deployment to Afghanistan from September 2010 to April 2011. He earned his BA and JD Juris Doctor from Yale University and his MA from Oxford University, where he studied as a Rhodes Scholar. He and his wife, Sarah, live in Hartford with their 3 young kids. Next, I'd like to introduce Doug McGarrah. Doug is co-chair of Foley Hoag's Real Estate and Development and Infrastructure and Construction Practices and past chairman of the firm's Administrative Law Department. Doug provides counsel to clients navigating at the intersection of business and government for over 25 years. Clients have relied on his strategic advice to help them manage government regulations and complete major development infrastructure projects. As project counsel, Doug leads and supports multidisciplinary teams focused on expediting permitting and successful development of large-scale mixed-use public and private facilities, commercial centers, and office developments with special expertise and experience on waterfront and transit-oriented developments. Doug's experience includes complex site assembly and urban redevelopment with an extensive and successful record of assisting private parties and public agencies and authorities reach creative solutions to complex development and regulatory compliance and funding issues. Doug has also counseled clients on the implementation of design, build, and finance techniques for more effective project delivery and on successful strategies for government procurements. His counsel is frequently sought on a wide variety of issues involving public policy at all levels of government. In summary, Doug knows how to get things done. And lastly, I'd like to introduce Bob Yarrow. Bob has had a 50-year career in regional and transportation planning for large metropolitan regions and mega regions in the US and abroad. He created and is working to advance the North Atlantic Rail Initiative that we'll be talking about today, which proposes to build a modern high-performance rail network serving New England and downstate New York, including Long Island. He is a professor emeritus at the University of Pennsylvania, having retired in 2020 after 19 years on the faculty. He is also president emeritus of Regional Plan Association, where he led RPA's strategic planning initiatives for the New York metropolitan region from 1990 to 2014. At RPA, he also led planning and advocacy efforts for more than $100 billion in transportation investments for the metropolitan region and rebuilding of Lower Manhattan and the World Trade Center after the 9/11 terrorist attacks. Prior to his service with RPA, he was a professor at the Massachusetts in Amherst, where he also founded and led the Center for Rural Massachusetts and created the nation's first smart growth program and coined the term smart growth. Before that, he was deputy commissioner of the Massachusetts Environmental Management, where he led the state's urban heritage, state's parks, and state land conservation initiatives. And prior to that, he was an urban planner for the city of Boston and the city of New Britain, Connecticut. Before coming to Penn, he taught at the graduate level at Harvard and Columbia universities and the universities of Massachusetts and Texas at Austin. Bob is also chairman of the Hershoff Marine Museum in Bristol, Rhode Island. He is an honorary lifetime member of the Royal Town Planning Institute and the American Society of Landscape Architects. And lastly, he summered on the North Fork on Long Island. Has Kevin joined us?
Hey, Dave, can you hear me?
I can. How you doing, Kevin?
Hey, good. I'm sorry I'm having issues today. My camera's not working, but you do hear me.
Yes, we
You do indeed.
Hey, good. Hey, guys, I'll be quick. And Dave, thanks for filling in, and thanks, Matt. Hey, thanks everybody for joining. Sorry for my technical difficulties, but I did want to just kick off the meeting by thanking everybody for joining us. A great event. We got a great panel. Also, I want to wish everybody a very happy Passover, and a happy Easter, and a happy spring. It's amazing that it's 1 year ago today, essentially, we have been doing these virtual meetings. The LIA kicked these off with Newsday and Debbie Krennick a year ago to help the business community, and the LIA has been doing these virtual meetings now for a year, and we can't wait to see you all in person again. Hopefully, maybe in May or June, we'll be able to start some smaller meetings in person, and because I know everybody does miss that human contact. I want to, again, thank everybody for all their well wishes for me. Tomorrow is my last day at the LIA. This is my penultimate event. We're doing an event tomorrow too with Mike Dowling. Many of you know Mike. He runs a very small little company with 77,000 employees here, known as Northwell. Should be really interesting tomorrow, so feel free to join us at 11. After I leave, Matt Cohen is going to be running the LIA along with our great chairman, Larry Wallman, until a decision is made on a replacement for me. I will miss working with all of you and pulling these events together, like this morning's program, to help the business community. I plan on announcing where I'm going to go tomorrow on my last day, so stay tuned. And I just wanted to acknowledge Dave Capel, who's just an amazing Long Islander, former village mayor of Greenport. Got to start working with him and his county executive Steve Levy's workforce housing commission. And then we became best of friends during the Third Track and the Right Track Coalition, and which may be just a warm up for this little project you're going to hear about today. So Dave, thanks for the introduction. Sorry for going out of order. And I'll hand it back to you now. And again, thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll now call on Bob Yarrow to give a description of the project.
Great, thanks, Dave. And thanks everybody for joining us this morning. So this map basically shows what we expect to build out on a new high performance rail system for the downstate New York region, including Long Island and New York City and the 6 New England states. The reason we're having this conversation now is that later this spring, President Biden is going to be revealing his proposal for a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure program, which we know is going to include funding for high-speed rail projects in California, in the Pacific Northwest, in Texas, and in the Northeast Corridor between New York City and Washington. Some of these are going to be in the $100 billion range, the California and Mid-Atlantic state proposals in particular. And so we thought it was important that we take this opportunity, which could be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us to make a major infrastructure investment like the one that you're going to hear about today. Essentially, we're focused on what the transportation planners call the north end of the Northeast Corridor, essentially the piece between New York and Boston. But what this really represents is what we're calling a rail-enabled economic transformation strategy. That would create a single market for ideas, capital, and talent across this new economic geography that encompasses New York City, Long Island, and New England. Long Island Sound has been a barrier for Long Islanders since the very beginning, as Dave will tell you later on. Of course, the East End was a part of Connecticut until the mid-17th century, but we've lost this connection with New England and the economic opportunities that go with it. So essentially what this represents, the green line on the map here is a proposed high-speed rail. This is 150 mile per hour plus service that would run from Penn Station, New York to Ronkonkoma with several stops on the island. And again, the final location of these stops to be determined through consultations with county executives and local officials and property owners and so forth. But we've indicated what some of them could be: Route 110, Ronkonkoma, Stony Brook, and others. And then you see the purple lines on the map represent upgrades to the intercity and regional rail network around Long Island and Westchester, the Bronx, and New England. And in particular on Long Island, you'll see that the Oyster Bay branch and then the extension of the main line from Ronkonkoma to Riverhead have been highlighted here. And the Riverhead extension would include a new stop at Brookhaven National Laboratories. One of the goals of this whole program is to connect the big research institutions, research universities, teaching hospitals with their counterparts in New York City and in New England. So for example, the high-speed service from Ronkonkoma and Stony Brook and Brookhaven National Labs essentially would be under 40 minutes from Stony Brook and BNL to New York City, a little over an hour to Boston and MIT and Harvard. And of course, Yale and the other institutions in the Connecticut Valley would be well under an hour. So the goal here is to make connections that just haven't existed in ever. Allow Long Island employers to draw on skilled workers from Southern New England and New England. Allow Long Islanders to have access to jobs and employment opportunities in New England and perhaps in New York, and even the trains do run in both directions. They'll go past Penn Station going south, even in New Jersey, to have access to airports across New England and northern New Jersey that simply aren't accessible now, and so forth. I think we envision a new economic geography. It's kind of hard to imagine, but the idea that of Long Island being fully integrated with the economy and mobility system of the entire 7-state region for the first time in history. We see this as a real game changer for the island. The total price tag of this thing is a little over $100 billion. And again, that's with a B. Used to sound like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, but it's basically what other high-speed rail projects around the world and other parts of the country have cost. We're hoping that the federal government will fund all of it or nearly all of it. One of the proposals that's been discussed is the idea of putting this project and the other high-speed rail projects across the country in a project of national significance category that could receive either 100% funding or 90% federal funding as part of this infrastructure program that will be adopted, we hope, later this year. That's kind of a quick overview. One last thought, and that's a lot of money, but it's essentially 5% of a $2 trillion program. The Times today said that the White House is now talking about a $3 trillion program. So we're at about 3% of a $3 trillion program, serving a region with 11% of the nation's population and 14% of its economy. So, and I did check and determine that the 7-state region sends $79 billion a year to Washington every year that we don't get back, according to the Rockefeller Institute in Albany. So, so we think that we merit this kind of investment. We think it'll be transformational, and we think that the business and civic and government leadership of the region needs to fight to make sure that we get our fair share of the president's infrastructure initiative. I'll stop there. We can answer questions or discuss other issues later on. Dave?
Thank you, Bob. Now I'll call on Steve Bellone to give his perspective from Long Island on the project.
Dave, thanks so much. Appreciate the introduction. And to Kevin, I was disappointed to hear. I thought this was going to be your last big meeting before you leave, but I know that everyone is very anxious to hear what your plans are. It's like the biggest cliffhanger on Long Island right now. But I want to thank you once again, my friend, for everything you've done for the region and for the state, and look forward to continuing to work with you to make progress for our region and for the state. And I think this project really is, and the fact that you're closing up your tenure here, advocating and talking about this project really is fitting, because you really have been at the center of pushing so many big initiatives. You mentioned, of course, Third Track, which was used, but so many others that have provided and made a difference for our economy and for this region. But truly,
thanks, Steve. I appreciate that, Steve. Thank you.
Of course, I don't think there's anything else that we could do or be talking about that is more transformative. Bob was right. This is a project of national significance. There's no question about that. And $105 billion. Yeah, billions used to be a lot of money last decade. That's so last decade now. Now it's trillions of dollars. But honestly, when you think about the expenditure of taxpayer dollars, I cannot think of a more effective, more high quality investment that we can make as a nation than high-speed rail in the Northeast corridor. 2/3 of rail commuters are in this corridor. A significant portion of our GDP comes out of this corridor. So the nation investing here just makes sense. It's transformative for the Northeast, but I would make the case that of all the places that this would impact, there's no place that it is more transformative for than Long Island, because as everyone knows here who rides on the LIA, we're essentially a cul-de-sac, one way in, one way out, and that poses unique challenges. This would open us up and connect us to the entire Northeast region in a way that just is not possible right now. And what that will do, our whole economic development plan, Dave mentioned this, is called Connect Long Island. And the reason for that is we understand that the best way for us to achieve economic prosperity on Long Island is to connect all of the incredible assets we have here, to leverage them together. This project, the North Atlantic Rail Project, is Connect Long Island on steroids. It's Connect Northeast. And bringing all of these elements together, the new housing opportunities it will create, the ability to move between job centers, will create greater economic prosperity up and down the corridor. But again, I think it's really here on Long Island. Let me highlight some of those things, some of which Bob mentioned. But the travel time between New York City, Ronkonkoma, 30 minutes between Ronkonkoma and New York City. That's half the amount of time it takes from MacArthur Airport to the city at Ronkonkoma. A little over an hour to Boston, half hour to Hartford. You could now live. You look at the amazing things happening in Hartford. You could easily live here and go to an innovation job in Hartford, vice versa. You could travel to Boston. Scientists from BNL working with scientists at MIT. We just, as you know, last fall, the LIA, Kevin was a big part of pushing this project, the electron ion collider, that multi-billion-dollar investment in Long Island, in our country, which is going to spur all this incredible economic development. This project now puts the electron ion collider, Brookhaven National Laboratory, and our other global innovation assets here at the center of the innovation ecosystem in the entire Northeast. Rather than being sort of an appendage to it, we're right at the heart of it. And I joked with my friends on the call, not only that, you would actually be able to go watch the Yankees beat the Red Sox at Fenway Park quicker than you could drive to Yankee Stadium once this project is built. And we're going to do that. Dave and I have already made a commitment to that.
Be nice, Steve. Be nice, Steve.
Kevin, the Red Sox. That's going to be a fun day. We're going to see this happen. But all the other possibilities here for Long Island, you talk about the 110 corridor. There's this great potential to create a real innovation and transportation hub in the biggest job center in the region. You have Republic Airport, the region's business airport. At the other end of the second track project, you have Ronkonkoma, where we have our region's airport, general aviation airport. So you have another opportunity to do real innovation transportation hub there. The connection to the East End, this is a real connection to the East End through the electrification of the main line out to Riverhead, will help with the revitalization of that downtown. It will open up revitalization opportunities for Riverside, that downtown on the other side of the Connecticut River, which is a community of color. That's a very important aspect of this. This opens up TOD opportunities in places like Brentwood and Central Islip, and expanding those opportunities in Wyandanch, communities of color. As we move forward in advancing this innovation economy, it's going to be very important that we connect every community to that innovation, to those innovation jobs, so that we can close the achievement gap. That's going to be critical for our economic growth in the coming years as we grow more diverse as a nation. And this project will help with that. This project, of course, will help address climate change. No region is more at threat or at risk from climate change than we are here on Long Island. So this will help significantly with that as well. It'll also connect places like EPCAL to create a real job center for the East End and for the region as a whole. So this project really, again, can't think of anything we could do in the coming years that would be more transformative, that would help grow our economy and create sustainable economic growth for decades to come. And Bob said, let me close with this. Bob said that the Long Island Sound has been a barrier for many years. We know that there have been efforts to try to cross the Sound with either a bridge or a tunnel since going back to the 1950s, and they've all been unsuccessful. I believe this project is different because it focuses on the right thing, which is making a high-speed rail connection, not moving tens of thousands of cars through neighborhoods, but connecting all of these major job centers in the Northeast Corridor through high-speed, energy-efficient rail. It will transform the region. It will help power our economy on Long Island for decades to come.
Thank you, Steve. Now I'd like to call on Mayor Luke Bronin from Hartford. Mayor Bronin.
Good morning. Thanks so much, Dave, and thank you, Kevin. It's great to be with you all and great to be with Steve again. You know, I'm sitting up here in Hartford, but I've got some ties to Long Island. My dad grew up in Freeport, and my grandma lived there till she was in her 90s. So I'm looking forward to being able to take the train from Hartford back to visit the old homestead. You know, I'm not sure I could say it better than Steve and Bob already have, but this is a project that is, it is about job growth. It's about economic opportunity. It's about expanded housing opportunity, labor market access and flexibility, and climate stewardship and climate responsibility. It does all of those things together. You know, it's pretty extraordinary that sitting here in Hartford, Connecticut, I cannot take a train to Providence, Rhode Island. I cannot take a train to Boston, Massachusetts. And although I'm 50 miles from Suffolk County, it would take me about 2.5 hours or more to drive there, 2.5 hours with no traffic. So, you know, you think about what a close, geographically small region we are, and yet how disconnected we are. And that has profound implications. It has particularly profound implications for the dozens of small and mid-sized cities on Long Island and throughout New England that have enormous potential, but have their potential limited and constrained by the fact that we've got this aging, failing infrastructure. You know, you've got dozens of mid-sized cities that have been left behind economically over the last few decades after the shifts in our region and our nation's economy in the mid and latter part of the 20th century that sit within what should be easy commuting distance to two of the nation's largest, fastest growing metro areas, New York and Boston. But right now do not benefit from that geographic position because our roads are congested and there's no rail option. So I think, as Steve said, this is a transformative proposal that links a region together in a way that will unlock economic growth that is multiples of the investment that this project would take. Bob already talked about, you know, how to think about this project in the context of a larger national infrastructure plan, a relatively small percentage of that national plan for an enormous impact in a region with a significant share of population and GDP. But what I think is also important to recognize is that as a country, we have to start being bold again. We have to start doing big things again. We're capable of it. You know, this is the country that built the Transcontinental Railroad, that built the interstate highway system. This is the 21st century version of that. We are behind dozens of countries around the world that have built high-speed rail systems. And if we're going to be competitive in the 21st century, we've got to do it. And looking in the chat box, I know that there are folks who are asking the question, how realistic is it? I think that that's up to us collectively as we build a coalition to push this. If you think about this region has 14 United States senators, got dozens of members of Congress in the House, including the chair of appropriations, the chair of Ways and Means, chair of House Rules, many others, and of course, also includes the Senate Majority Leader. So I think that the political capacity is there to make this happen if we are strong enough in building a coalition. And that's why I'm so excited sitting here in Hartford to join the Long Island Association this morning to talk about this, because if we are jointly going in and not just arguing for the individual projects that would make a difference in the near term, and we absolutely need to push for those in the phase one of this, but also going in together with that bigger generational mission that will connect our cities, our region in a way that we haven't been throughout our history, but that is a game changer for all of us. I think we can get it done. So really appreciate the chance to be with you this morning, and look forward to the rest of the conversation.
Thank you, Luke. I'll now call on Doug McGarrett to offer the perspective from Boston.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Dave, and greetings from Boston. And it's my honor to serve as the other co-chair on this effort, and to offer some perspective. One of the aspects of my background and history that Dave did not mention in my firm bio was that I had been the chief of staff and chief counsel on the Artery Tunnel project, the Big Dig, up here in Boston. And in some ways, that is the last transformative project that a lot of people can remember in this region. I am currently serving as the chair of A Better City, which is a business organization of the largest employers and property owners in the metropolitan Boston region. And A Better City actually was the successor to the Artery Business Committee, which was a business watchdog group to make sure that as the state undertook this transformative project, that it remained open for business, which I am pleased to report it certainly did. And really, to Mayor Bronin's point, it was the kind of big thing and transformative thing that a lot of people, when this project was being advanced in the 80s, thought was unrealistic, foolhardy, and otherwise a dream. And yet $14.946 billion later, half of which, by the way, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts footed, it is truly a transformative project in terms of the accessibility and the quality of life and environment in Boston. And I'm sure, most of you have all been to Boston and seen what it has meant. You can see with these two pictures, a snapshot of how the city has changed. My office is in the Seaport, where there has been over $10 billion worth of private investment and development directly resulting from the Central Artery Tunnel project. So my message today to all of you is that we can do big things. We have to have the will and the imagination and the vision to do it. One of the things that Luke and Bob and I have experienced as we've talked to business leaders and elected officials about this project is that there has been if you will, a culture of small thinking that has developed over the last 20 or 30 years as our public dollars for addressing things like infrastructure have dwindled. And so when we go to the DOTs in the 7-state region, oftentimes we get blank stares when we talk about the North Atlantic Rail project, that it's such a transformative and truly timely and creative project that is in some ways so obvious, but yet so beyond the scope of thinking. And so we are really trying to, as Bob set forth in his remarks, to grab on to the idea of transformative projects and high-speed rail and the interest that our president has in these projects, and see that, in addition to such projects going to New York South, to Washington, D.C., in California, in Texas, in the mid-Atlantic states, and in Florida, that we also are a part of that transformative investment in infrastructure and think that it is time. So with that, I'll shorten my remarks to make up for my co-presenter, Steve. Steve, I have season tickets to Fenway Park and would be happy to share with you the honor of a weekend series. So with that, turn it back to Dave.
Thank you,
Well,
Doug.
Look forward to it, Doug.
Good.
Thank you very much. I'd like to put North Atlantic Rail and Long Island's crucial connection to New England in historical context. Our geographical connections are both ancient and intimate. Long Island exists thanks to the glaciers that form the Sound and push the land we stand on today across from Connecticut. Ancient Native Americans rode across the Sound in canoes to trade with partners in New England. In 1640, the first settlers on eastern Long Island came across from Connecticut to establish Southold and Southampton. In the 19th century, coasting schooners and ferries sailed from Long Island carrying goods and people to ports throughout New England. For example, the foundations of houses in Greenport from this time were built with fieldstone originating as ballast on schooners from Maine. Oops, excuse me. I'll be right with you. I apologize.
Here we go.
You are looking at a photo of the Greenport rail yard in the 19th century. When the first rail connection between New York City and Boston ran from Brooklyn to Greenport, then by steamship across Long Island Sound to the inland rail to Boston. This brought all New England bound passengers and freight through Greenport, thus fueling its dramatic rise as Long Island's original transit-oriented development. Today, 2 ferry services continue to maintain this connection. North Atlantic Rail will launch this historic relationship to the next level and create a 7-state mega region and an economic powerhouse for future generations. We need to return to the kind of big thinking that produced America's foundational infrastructure, like the Transcontinental Railroad, the interstate highway system, and our own Long Island Railroad. It's back to the future for Long Island. I'll grant you this is a moonshot that will take decades to realize in full, but that didn't stop President Kennedy from getting us to the moon. And it should not stop us now from realizing the transformational benefits that high-speed rail will bring to Long Island and New England and our children. We must not let our future become an aging relic of our past. So we've got a lot of questions in the Q&A and chat room, and we'll take as many as we can. Starting with Scott Benton to the panelists, what would be the time from New York City to Boston? And I think the answer to that is 100 minutes. From John Santamaria, the proposed system looks exciting. What are plans there to address the obstacles encountered in the past with respect to building a tunnel system under Long Island Sound? Bob, can I ask you to take that?
Yeah, I mean, when I ran Regional Plan Association, and back in the 50s and early 60s, RPA led the opposition to Moses' proposed Oyster Bay Rye Bridge because it was going to do a lot of damage to the Sound. It was a bridge. It was a highway bridge. And the approaches were off the Long Island Expressway and off I-95 in Westchester. And already those were very congested arteries. They're even more congested today. So this proposal, it's rail only. It's an electrified system, so there's no problem with exhaust fumes that have to be vented and so forth. We're talking about using automated tunnel boring machines to build this thing. More than 100 tunnels longer than this one. This one would be 16 miles long. More than 100 have been built around the world in the last 20 years for rail projects like this one. So it's eminently feasible. It's off-the-shelf technology. The tunnel would be 50, 80, 100 feet. We'll work out the details in final design, way below the bottom of the Sound. Malcolm Bowman, the oceanographer at Stony Brook, has told us that he sees the zero impact on the sound of the sound's environmental resources, because no impact on the bottom of the sound because we're way below it, and the portals would be a half mile or more back from the edge of the sound. So again, this isn't just Long Islanders paying to use this thing. This is going to be the entire, Northeast corridor using this thing. So we think that there's a much broader, and again, it's we're proposing that most or all of it be financed by the federal government this time. None of those circumstances have ever been in place.
Bob, and let me just add to emphasize, I think the profound difference that it makes that this is just rail. Every one of the projects that have been proposed in the past, there has been massive opposition based on people not wanting tens of thousands of cars traveling through specific neighborhoods on their way to a bridge or a tunnel. This doesn't do that. And the fact that it's a tunnel and it is efficient high-speed rail only, I think are this is exactly the right way to do it and why this can succeed.
Thanks, Steve and Bob. A question from Scott Brinton to panelists. What is the time frame for construction? As I mentioned earlier, we estimate around 20 years. And a question from Barbara Ransomes. How much buy-in does local and private property owners need to have? Eminent domain, how many years? Again, 20 years. Bob, maybe I'll let you talk to the question of eminent domain.
We haven't stressed it in the presentation yet, but the thing that makes this possible is that there are a series of either unused or seldom used freight routes on Long Island owned by the MTA, by the state of New York, and power rights of way owned by LIPA with overhead power lines that we'd be using for this. And a lot of tunneling under in and adjoining already developed areas and so forth to avoid takings of property and impacts on residential communities and so forth. So we're not anticipating the need for a lot of property acquisition or eminent domain to do this thing. That's what makes it possible. And when you line up these abandoned or underutilized rights of way, they're basically straight and flat, which are the two things that you need to build high-speed rail.
Thank you, Bob. And here's a question. Sure, go ahead, Luke.
Jump in with one piece, which I think we'd probably be addressing in a later question, but it's worth talking about here. That as we talk about that 20-year time frame, it's important also to stress that there are important components of this that would be done much more quickly. We referred, in some of the presentations to a phase 1, phase 2. The concept actually has 3 total phases. The phase 1 projects are those projects that are near-term projects that really do make a significant difference and have been identified as near-term priorities by many of the states that are involved here. I know there are a couple of those phase 1 projects on Long Island. I'll let Steve or Bob or somebody else speak to those. Other phase 1 components in the region include East-West Rail in Massachusetts, which would connect Springfield into Boston, improvements in the New York to New Haven line. Those are elements of this plan that we think could be under construction within a couple of years. Again, creating near-term job opportunity as part of this recovery moment right now. The next phase is that true high-speed rail trunk that we've spent so much time talking about. And then the third phase are those spur lines and connections to a number of smaller mid-sized cities throughout the region that then get linked in to that high-speed trunk and finish out this truly integrated system. So I think worth spending a second on that. And I don't know, Bob or Steve, you want to talk about the phase 1 projects on Long Island?
Yeah, Luke, thank you. I think certainly the electrification out to Riverhead that in itself, if you weren't talking about it being connected to high-speed rail, would be a huge project for the region, for Long Island, for the East End. But that's a project that in and of itself will have great economic impact and do many positive things, as well as the connection to Oyster Bay that Bob had mentioned.
Thank you, everybody. Here's a question from John Costanzo. Are there any plans to carry freight or small parcels on the line, which could be a very efficient way to feed the supply chains of the region, but also help reduce the number of trucks running on the LIA and up through 95, perhaps during off hours or overnight? Bob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, all of those things are possible. We've looked at all of those things. Amtrak, for example, runs off-peak freight services on the Northeast Corridor now, and we can imagine, and other high-speed rail lines around the world do the same thing. And then the other thing, of course, is this idea of carrying FedEx and UPS packages and so forth, the high priority just-in-time packages. Which is, by the way, what the railroads used to do. And so we think that's entirely possible. That's going to be part of the further feasibility development of this whole project.
Thanks, Bob. And here's a question from Matthew Arasich. This project has the potential to transform the region into a self-reliant portion of New York State. Long Island would have less impact from the downturn of New York City's economy. The fact is, this will be infrastructure as expected to have significant improvements in attracting new businesses and expanding opportunities to the largest industrial park in the country. What is the anticipated economic multiplier associated with this project? Bob, maybe you might want to mention the STEER report that we're working on.
Yeah, so we had a team of researchers at the University of Pennsylvania a few years ago develop a cost benefit analysis. We determined a 2.5 to 1. Benefit cost analysis, 2.5 times the benefits to the cost. We now have an in-depth business case plan being developed by STEER, the STEER Group, which is a London-based firm that essentially does this kind of work for high-speed rail projects around the world. We'll have a preliminary report from them in a month, and then a more in-depth look at the economic and other benefits. They're also looking, by the way, at climate benefits, at short-term and long-term employment growth, at the impact that this would have on disadvantaged communities, Black and Latino communities and so forth that have been hard hit by the pandemic. So all of the items on the punch list that we've been told that the White House is looking at to evaluate projects like this one.
Thanks, Bob. And here's a question from Mark Hissey. Are we going to be truly ambitious? Rail systems overseas in China, Italy, Japan, Germany, and even Saudi Arabia have trains that travel in excess of 200 miles an hour. In addition, this will have components to carry cars and will this have components to carry cars and freight like the Channel Tunnel? Freight in particular puts a huge amount of stress on Long Island roads. Bob, is there any talk about trains being able to haul cars like the Channel?
We haven't looked at that, and that's but I suppose that's possible, and we will take a look at it. But as I mentioned before, we have looked at freight and the opportunities to carry freight off peak, and in particular the kind of high value UPS, Federal Express packages and so forth. The system's being designed for 150 plus, up to 225 miles per hour. Sections of it will be able to operate at 225. Where we're constrained by right of way, and some of that's happening on the island. We're saying minimum of 150 miles per hour. So it's very definitely in world class high speed rail territory.
Thank you. And here's a question from an anonymous attendee. Who will own the revenue that the rail produces? Is this a federally owned system similar to the MTA, or will it be a company like Amtrak? Bob, this might be a good idea to explain the format we have in mind.
Yeah, we proposed that a new federal state partnership be established by the Congress. We're calling it North Atlantic Rail, Inc. This is based on the precedents in Europe and Asia, where special purpose companies have been established to build these projects, and we've left open the question of whether the tracks and the dispatching and so forth would continue to be managed by North Atlantic Rail, or would it be transferred? Some of it might be transferred to the MTA and others, particularly the phase 1 and phase 3 components. Revenues, again, we're fighting to have this thing be largely financed by the federal government so that we don't have to cover debt service out of the fare boxes. The goal here is for the system, the services to be fast, frequent, safe, reliable, and cheap. That we want to see affordable fares. This is unlike the current Amtrak setup where they're trying to cover capital costs and subsidized services across the country out of the fare box on the Acela. So we think that we can achieve. We think this can be operated on a break-even basis, on an operating perspective, and that we'll be able to have first class and the business class services on every train that will cross subsidize the coach services. That'll be 70 or 80% of the passengers on every train.
Thanks, Bob. And we've got time for one last question from Dave Cologne. Interested in hearing about the rail tech needed to make these high-speed linkages. I do work in Japan, and the bullet trains are impressive. They are also developing the next generation of bullet trains. Do we need that tech, or is the current tech sufficient?
Well, I'll take a swipe at that. The good news and the bad news is that bad news first, where the 27 other countries have built these systems, including a number, every developed country in Europe and Asia, and now a growing number of developing countries, places like Kazakhstan and Morocco and Indonesia. So that's the bad news. Good news, we can learn from their experience. This is well-developed technology. We'll be getting the latest high-speed rail technology, steel wheel on steel rail, which is still the state of the art. We expect that to remain the state of the art. The idea, and again, the idea behind the North Atlantic Rail Link is that we'd have a small, efficient bureaucracy that would be hiring the best talent from around the country and around the world to finalize the design and engineering for this system, taking in the best technology that we can get.
Thank you. That wraps up our Q&A. Before I turn the program back over to Kevin Law, I just want to say a few things about this man. Kevin, you've been a gift for Long Island, for me, for all of us on the panel. I mean, your contribution to the Long Island economy and the people here over the last 10 years has just been extraordinary. You deserve a Nobel Prize. And I know you're not going anywhere, and you're going to be around to help us. But I got to tell you, it's just your network, your accessibility, your wisdom. What an unbelievable gift to the people in the businesses of Long Island. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. Over to you.
Dave, thanks so much. As I said, at our ages, it's not usual that you establish best friends and great new friends this stage of our life. So really, it's been a gift to me to become great friends with you over the last 10 years. I want to thank all of our panelists. The mayor from Hartford, it was great to meet you. Doug from Boston, if Steve Bellone didn't tell you, I'm a diehard Red Sox fan. And when you said you had season tickets, my ears lit up. So look forward to becoming good friends with you as well. Bob Yarrow, thanks for all you've done over the decades and always keeping an eye on Long Island as well.
Yep.
Steve Bellone is one of the, he's a visionary county exec. He really doesn't care about politics. He cares about getting things done, and also cares about process. And he likes to be a part of things and figuring things out. And Steve just does such great work. And Steve, thank you for everything you do, and thanks for your friendship. And I just want to leave you all with this. I've been cleaning out some files and some drawers over the last 2 weeks, and true story, came across a letter from Robert Moses to the LIA in 1948. So we're talking about 73 years ago. And 73 years ago, he's thanking the LIA for its support of the construction of the Northern and Southern State Parkways, and also our support for completing that Long Island Expressway all the way to Route 110. And people take these things for granted today. We also have letters in our file in support of the Queensboro Bridge, now the Ed Koch Bridge, connecting us, in a different way to Manhattan. If we didn't have folks back in the day thinking big and doing big projects like that, where would we be today? And likewise, this is an incredibly exciting project. It's not a project that gets done overnight. And many of us on the call we won't even be alive when it gets completed. But we need to think about our region and the whole New England region, for the next 73 years. And, we need to take visionary, bold steps today, even if we may not be the beneficiaries of it today, but our kids will be, our grandchildren will be. And even with the third track, it was first proposed, 5 decades ago. Because of NIMBYism and other things, it didn't get done until, the last few years, which required a lot of leadership. But similarly, if people weren't coming up with those plans for the third track decades ago, we wouldn't be near completion. That project is going to be completed at the end of this year and will be operating next year. And so big things can happen. It takes vision, it takes leadership, and it takes collaboration. And I think the third track gave us a good model of getting business, labor, local officials, and community folks all involved to think big, to think beyond our own lives, and to think what would be great for our region for the future. So thank you all for participating. And again, I wish you all a very happy Passover and a happy Easter. And we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Kevin.
you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Thank you,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. And we're done.